Now, Spider-Man, one of every early 2000 child's first superhero, and I belong to that demographic. I love Spider-Man, basically. Spider-Man was one of my favorite heroes growing up next to the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and Hulk. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was one of the heroes where I avidly had merch of, from Spidey masks, toys, lunchboxes, pencil cases, costumes, bags, and I watched all of the three movies on repeat every Sunday as a child. I watched the spectacular animated series, and life was good. Another Spider-Man played by Andrew Garfield came by, and I still enjoyed his performance. I thought that this was a gritty face of Peter Parker, which could perfectly relate to the growing Spider-Man fans. So when I heard that both of these Spider-Man, both Tobey and Andrew, along with several of the villains, were coming back for a multiversal crossover in the titular Spider-Man No Way Home, I was beyond anticipated. I was hyped so much that I began to fear whether it would deliver or not on its promise of greatness via nostalgia. However, I saw the film with my friends in cinemas and watched it again and again and again and again
Again
and
and again and again until we're both dead.
I have to say, it did deliver. It is a good Spider-Man film with satisfying primary conclusion to the MCU Spider-Man arc. This is basically the Avengers Endgame of the Spider-Man franchises, where a long story arc concludes to pave a way for the new arc. Spider-Man in this movie feels complete. Spider-Man feels like the Spider-Man we know and love. Spider-Man is not the Iron Man Jr. that critics have been slamming him on for years. And of course, this is full-on spoilers ahead, because if this would be spoiler free, I really wouldn't know what I would be talking about. So, let's begin talking about what I did like from Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, I am very glad to say that this is a film where Tom Holland's Peter is where he is at his most close to comic book Spider-Man that we get. Given the darker tone, this movie also has higher stakes than any other Spider-Man film in the MCU, as opposed to Homecoming and Far From Home, wherein the villains had agendas against Tony Stark instead of Spider-Man, and wherein Peter could choose whether to take the responsibility or not. The film opens with him facing the consequences of Mysterio's exposing of his identity, and it raises the stakes so much on a personal level. The film sees him struggle with the classic Spider-Man line,
With great power comes great responsibility.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
the plot's central action is on Spider-Man saving everyone, including the villains. Peter is just really naturally this nice guy, where he will help anyone even if these are people who antagonize him. We've seen these traits in both past Spider-Man franchises, and we see it very evidently today in No Way Home. This movie also explores the MCU Spider-Man in darker tones. Basically, the nice guy traits of Peter Parker fade halfway into the movie to explore Peter's darker side. The light and the dark sides of Peter give us a chance to properly flesh out Peter's humanity, and this is well portrayed through Tom Holland's performances. It finally gave us the part in Peter Parker's arc where he really suffers the same fate of going down a dark path due to the tragedies and pressure, just like Tobey and Andrew's Spider-Man. And of course, this movie wouldn't be worth talking about if I didn't mention the appearance of the two most awaited versions of Spidey, Raimi Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man. And indeed, these two appear, and these are two characters that have stirred up a lot of emotions in my little nerd brain. I like how there is so much chemistry in between these three Spider-Man, and they kind of act like they have a brother-like dynamic. In terms of acting though, I think Andrew steals the show a lot, and there is a lot of passion and charm put into his performance as Spider-Man, and it's kind of nice to see his version of Spider-Man get the appreciation that he deserves, and of course, a redemption arc by saving MCU MJ. Tobey feels cool, but he also seems too tired to do the role. But nevertheless, it is nice seeing him after 13 years of not being in our screens. I do like how the presence of two Spider-Man is balanced enough to surprise the audience whilst not overshadowing Tom Holland's Spider-Man narrative. I also think that the villains here are really good accessories to the movie as well. And I say accessories because while the villains feel more authentic as characters, except for this one, they are more of stepping stones and obstacles in in Peter's character arc than solid antagonists who hinder him from his growth. Green Goblin and the other villains try to challenge Peter's morality by proving time and time again that they are unsavable, putting him through different hardships and tragedies that make Peter question if the villains are actually worth saving, and it adds so much moral struggle and conflict to the film and Peter himself. And I would say that the performances put up by the villains are great as well. Willem Dafoe is a really good actor who brought a lot of energy and madness to Green Goblin. Dafoe at this point embodies the persona of Green Goblin, and this performance is consistent without the need of a Green Goblin mask. He's actually more terrifying without it, basically. Alfred Molina's Doc Ock has the best redemption arc, spanning from his first appearance in Spider-Man 2, and he really doesn't feel like a bad guy anymore. I would say that No Way Home does a good job in exploring Doc Ock's actual innate goodness and how he was just a victim to his own creation. And basically the best villain redesign in this movie would probably be Electro's, who now sports a more comic accurate look and is more likable, funny, and bombastic in this one. Now I do say that No Way Home is a good film, but is it the best 2021 Marvel movie? No. That title still belongs to Shang-Chi. Then is it the best Spider-Man movie?
Oh, Kate Bishop, you are so funny. That's hilarious. That one is the funniest.
Don't get me wrong though, this movie has great spectacles, entertainment value, and delivers on solid, emotional, hard-hitting moments. But it does have a lot of flaws in terms of plot and a bit of messy writing on this part. No movie is sacred from problems. But nevertheless, I still enjoyed this movie, but these problems are hard to ignore, and I will tell you what are these problems.
All of this going on up here is what's causing me the most physical discomfort. This area is not good either. I hate this, but I'm mainly worried about this.
Now this movie basically features a number of plot holes, like how does Electro and Venom know Peter Parker? How were they not able to rediscover Spider-Man's true identity after Strange Mind wiped everyone? Memories were wiped, yes, but not video footage, media news, posts, newspapers, or even text messages from past loved ones. And also the biggest plot holes I noticed was when it was revealed that basically Doctor Strange could have pressed the box anytime to send the villains home, but we needed to have this huge cool segment of Spider-Man fighting and catching some villains. Also, I would say that some of the villains' motives are kind of weak, in a sense wherein you have to form your own conclusions to decide what their motives are. Sandman has a motivation to go home, yet he antagonizes Peter and joins others who want to destroy the box. Lizard here is just the most forgettable and the weakest villain who has zero motivations at all. I also kind of felt that Aunt May's death was a bit too sudden as well. The general MCU audience was just being accustomed to her playing the hot mom role, and we didn't really get to see her make an impact on Peter while she was still alive. She did have hints of the original comic book Aunt May setting into this movie, but just as we get those moments where she becomes Peter's mentor, Peter's inspiration, she dies. Although to be fair with the film, I would say that this death is necessary in bringing Peter to the
Dark side of the force.
but there are better ways to deconstruct Peter Parker's current character state. In killing Uncle Ben in the other Spider-Man universes was necessary because it was a wake-up call for both Peters on the topic of responsibility, but killing Aunt May here felt like a compliance that every now and then Peter's arc needs a loved one to die, and it ends up feeling as cheap as Black Widow's death in Endgame. And a lot of the film's marketing material kind of stars the movie experience because the trailers kind of reveal the film's plot, which makes the movie often feel sluggish and predictable. And I felt like the final fight was such a lazily written Spider-Man fight because there was so little creativity put on how the fight structure goes. Like the goal is to do some flips, cure the villains, and that's it, we have a Spider-Man fight. And I would say that the only fight scene I genuinely enjoyed was the first Doc Ock vs Iron Spider bridge scene. He moves and dodges instead of directly fighting and uses the environment to his advantage when fighting to outsmart his enemies. Now, I won't tell you that these problems aren't distracting because for me, they did kind of disturb my film experience, but the film makes you forget its flawed writing and narrative choices by letting old villains and past Spider-Man to appear on screen. The film executes its use of nostalgia bait really well by genuinely giving a reason to bring past Spider-Man characters in an organic way, and ends the film with the most beautiful back-to-basics Spider-Man costume with a great long take of Peter Parker swinging through New York. It just feels like the director is doing what he knows what fans want. I have so much heart for this movie, and while I do say that this is not the best Spider-Man movie, this is something that I can equally enjoy as much as the Spider-Verse movie. No Way Home has heart, charm, wholesomeness, and a certain type of cinema magic that bands people together than the United Nations ever could. So I am giving this film a personal
Tell you what you get! Get what you fucking deserve!
with great power comes with great responsibility. See you in the next video.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Swims away inside, catches thieves just like flies. Hey there, here comes that Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look.